Hello, this is a message to say that a brand new Super Week is now in motion, which means from Sunday the 19th of January until Saturday the 25th of January, there will be a brand new episode released every single day. For early releases, ad-free listening, and lots of other exclusive episodes, please consider becoming a super listener for approximately 75p a week. Details are in the description.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
To the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. It's time for yet another Super Week. This time we're going to be focusing on a team, and that team is Manchester United. Whether you're a Manchester United fan or not, I'm sure you will enjoy listening and learning about all of the legends, current players and subjects which we will cover over the next 7 episodes. So to kick us off on this very special Super Week, we're going to be talking about a man you would have heard of on the podcast before. A man who, like Sir Alex Ferguson, was an unbelievably successful football manager for, of course, Manchester United. And a man whose legacy is cemented not only in the Manchester United history books, but in football history books forever. Of course, in this episode, we're going to be talking about no other than Sir Matt Busby. Before we get into that episode, as I promised, we're getting back to the shout-outs and messages this year, so let's get cracking with them. Hello, this is Bruno. I am 6 years old. I live in London. I am British and Italian, and I support Chelsea and Bologna, and also England, and also Italy. Thank you for your great podcast. I'm learning so much about all the players and I love feeling inspired to do my best. Cole Palmer is my hero. Well, you're not the only one, Bruno. He's also my son Charlie's hero. Please can you give a shout out to my coach Ruben, and please can you make an episode about Noni Madueke? Well, Bruno from London, who supports all of those different teams, a massive shout out to you, to everybody you know, everybody in your football team, to your coach Ruben, and don't you worry, Madueke, what a player he is on my list. The next message says, "Hi, my name's Fraser. I'm 6 years old and I love your podcast. I listen to it every single night before bed. I would like to know if you're going to do an episode on Ronaldo, as he's my favourite. Thanks, from Fraser." Well, Fraser, you'll be very pleased to know that I have done many an episode on Cristiano Ronaldo and R9 Ronaldo. Have a search through the 250 or more episodes and I'm sure you'll find it in there. Also, for Patreons and super listeners on Apple Podcast subscription, you will get a very special Cristiano Ronaldo at Manchester United episode exclusive this week. And the last one says, "Hi Darren, my name is Adam and I live in South Korea." Wow, I didn't know we had listeners all the way over in South Korea. I'm 11 years old and I love your podcast and I listen to it every single day without fail. I play for my school team and I would like you to give my footballing legend of a sister, Anna, a shout out because she is the GSOAT, that's the GSOAT, in brackets, the greatest sister of all time. she has won the biggest tournament we have for school teams in Korea. Not once, but twice. This time she scored 7 goals in the tournament. This is a massive accomplishment. She is a striker and I am a goalkeeper, so we practice a lot together. I support Chelsea and my favourite players are Cole Palmer and Christian Pulisic. I would love to see an episode on Pulisic, my national hero, as I love him. Well, Adam in South Korea, thank you so much for being a listener, and what a lovely thing for you to do, to call your sister the greatest sister of all time. So, also to your sister Anna, a massive shout out to you. It sounds like you're doing wonderful things as well. Thank you both for being listeners of the Football for Kids podcast. I really genuinely appreciate it. If you'd like a shout out for yourself, your mates, your football team, your coaches, your mum, your dad, your sister, your aunties, your uncles, your dogs, your cats, your goldfish, or whatever it is, ask an adult to head to www.footballforkidspodcast.com, fill in the contact form, and you may well end up on the podcast. Now, before we dive into this episode properly, I want to point something out. Sir Matt Busby is the oldest player we've ever covered on this podcast. Not in terms of when he played, but when he was born. We've talked about football history, clubs, players, and much more. But we've never focused on someone in particular from such a distant past. Matt Busby was born all the way back in 1909. Which is an incredible 116 years ago. That's a lifetime away from the world we know today. And before we go into the history, because we're talking about a time from so long ago, I think it's important that we take a moment to set the scene and imagine what life was like for Sir Matt Busby and his family all the way back then, 116 years ago. In 1909, life in Great Britain was vastly different to what it is today. There were no iPads, no computers, no game consoles, no smartphones, and there weren't really even any televisions. For many children, school wasn't even an option. They had to work to help support their families. Houses were often overcrowded, with many people crammed into small, sometimes grim spaces. It was a hard, working class life, especially in places like mining villages where Sir Matt Busby grew up. I mean, of course, he wasn't Sir Matt Busby back then. Matt was born on the 26th of May in 1909 in a small mining village in Scotland. His father worked in the coal mines. It was a physically demanding and dangerous job that required strength, resilience, and a toughness that very few could match. The mines were dark, dusty and perilous places, and it was a job that demanded a lot from people. Though his father worked hard in the mines, he was also passionate about football, playing for a local team whenever he got the opportunity. When Matt was born, the doctor looked at his parents and he said, "A footballer was born in this house today." Little did they know just how right that this doctor was. But Matt Busby's early years were marked by hardship. When he was just a boy, his father was called in to fight in World War I, and tragically, he lost his life on the battlefield. This left Matt, now the oldest of 4 children, to step up and help support his mother and 3 younger sisters. To try and make some money, Matt dropped out of school and began working in the very same coal mines his father had worked in. At just 14 years old, he was already taking on lots of responsibility and providing for his family. It was a tough and grueling life, but Matt knew without his work there would be no food on the table. Despite the hardship of life in the mines, something was brewing in Matt's heart. Football, of course. He loved the game, and deep down he knew it might offer a way out of the miserable, back-breaking world of working in the mines. But in the early 1900s, the opportunities in football were nothing like you see today. Kids who wanted to be footballers played on the streets, and if they were lucky they might have a garden to practice in. Still, for Sir Matt Busby, football was the dream, and he believed it could well be his escape from the darkness. At the age of 17, Matt took a leap of faith, and he went for a trial at Manchester City. His mother wasn't thrilled about it. She didn't like the idea at all, to tell you the truth. She didn't think much would come of it. She thought it was a waste of time. But Matt driven by the hope that football could change his and his family life, went along anyway. At the time, Manchester City wasn't one of the top clubs in the country, but it was still a solid team. Players earned around £9 a week, or in Matt's case it would be a lot less, which in today's terms might be the equivalent of a few £100s. It wasn't a fortune, but it was far more than Matt was earning down the mines doing a horrible, grotty and dangerous job. Manchester City took Matt on trial, and while he wasn't the most dazzling talent they'd ever seen, they recognised something in him. He wasn't the best, but he certainly had potential. They offered him a place, and Matt joined their ranks, training with the first team. But it wasn't easy, I can tell you that for something. The early days were tough, really tough. And as a young player, he would have to do the same thing what other young players did, and that was cleaning the boots of senior players. It was a rite of passage for every youngster in those days. But despite the hard work, Matt struggled. He didn't quite feel like he was at the level of the players around him. And after a while, he started to doubt himself, whether he was really cut out for this life, of playing football at this level. One day, while packing his bags to leave, something happened that changed everything. One of the senior players, who was a very nice gentleman indeed, came into his room and asked him what was going on. Matt explained that he didn't feel like it was working out for him, and he was going home. He'd made his decision. His mind was made up. The player took a deep breath. He looked at him and said one sentence that made Matt stop in his tracks. "Well, what's for you at home, then?" Matt paused, thinking about the mines, the long days, the hard work underground, and he realised he couldn't go back to that life. That one question changed everything. He decided to stay. Matt stuck it out at Manchester City, and over time, he naturally improved. His hard work and determination certainly paid off. And in 1934, he won the FA Cup with City. Playing more than 200 games for the club, he really did get into his groove. Eventually, he made a move to Liverpool, where he played over 100 games. But as Matt was establishing himself as a seriously good and talented player, the world was once again plunged into war. Matt had already experienced World War I. The country was now involved in World War II. This was a dark and tough time for Matt and everybody else. During the war, Matt briefly served as a football coach for the army, but his love for the game never wavered. As the war came to an end, Matt knew his playing career was nearing its end as well. He didn't want to leave football behind though. He loved it. He still had passion for the game. So he decided to try his hand at management. His days as a player were coming to an end, but a new chapter was about to begin. One that would change the history of football forever. And that is where we'll leave it for today, at the crossroad of Matt Busby's career. In our next episode, we'll dive into his journey as a manager, a leader and a visionary, who would go on to leave a legacy that would live on for generations to come. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to part 1 on Sir Matt Busby. Certainly a player who would go on to be one of the greatest managers to ever do it. So remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly or pitch side, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.